Time for Michigan's newest sports talk show, Mitten Madness.
And here he goes. Defense win championship.
Michigan sports talk from here in Battle Creek. The latest stories, the biggest games, all across the Mitten State.
That's not something to play with.
Streaming live and on demand on the 95.3 WBCK app. Here are your hosts, Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes.
Hello there. Good morning. This is Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK. Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes. It is the season for the namesake of this show, March Madness, in full effect. And DJ, I am quickly learning why they call it madness, because you will quickly go mad if you care too much about your bracket, especially when you only made it 2 hours before the tip-off of the first game. You felt just too good about it. That's what I did. But we got that to go get into, some Red Wings as well. We've got a bunch of fun games to pick at the end of the show. Not that we're going to pay too much attention to how bad I did last week in that regard. But before we get too heavy into any of this, DJ, how's it going, man?
You know, I'm already mad. That's it. The madness is absolutely flowing already. But honestly, I love the tournament, having a great time. Had our first game of the year for lacrosse on Wednesday. Did not come out with the win, but I don't think that's as important with first games. You're kind of just getting out there and knocking off the first game jitters, seeing what you're doing really well at the moment, seeing what you're not doing well, and you can adjust. We have spring break, and then we have an entire week of practice before we get into conference play and more games. So we're going to be able to take advantage of that week, watch some film, get back out on the field. So I'm just honestly really happy for, one, a break from working 1,000 hours in a day and being able to just relax a little bit, but also just sports, man. Like March and like spring is the best time, because even though football like just ended, the UFL is about to be coming back, and then you have lacrosse, you have basketball, you have football, you have hockey. Everything is right here, and it's all like at its pinnacle pretty much. Obviously with the Super Bowl just ending. So I just love this time of year because sports are able to ravage. Yeah,
not to mention, free agency in the NFL, the NFL draft, spring training kicking off for college football. But I'm having a ton of fun getting into March Madness. It's about the only thing I can focus on outside of work at the moment. And I, too, am going absolutely mad. I at least just took some solace that my Midwest quarter of the bracket looks really good, as long as you don't look at the fact that I picked South Carolina to go to the Elite Eight. Got every other game that's been played so far as of Friday at 1:30. And obviously shouldn't get the other ones wrong anyway, but it's been a fun tournament. But, we'll get into one of the bigger upsets in a little bit, but I do want to kind of start. We already have kind of talked about this off the air, so it's going to be a little weird to talk about it again for us. But what does your bracket look like? Who are you investing the most faith in? Who do you regret putting faith in? How's your bracket going?
I did the same thing you did, and I made this like an hour before the first game tipped. So I was looking at all the previews and like looking at last games and scoring like trends and stuff, and there were some trends that I really liked, like Nevada over Dayton. I really liked that trend, like the way that they scored the ball and some of the wins that they had. That obviously didn't work out.
Nope.
Colorado State over Texas did not work out. Duquesne, I don't know if anybody actually expected Duquesne to come out ready to play like they did, but a lot of people are saying, well, BYU did it because they can't play on Sundays. So there's that big thing, too, with everything going on with BYU. And, of course, the biggest bracket buster of them all, not even a Michigan native. I don't know any Michigan native that didn't go to Oakland that picked Oakland to win that game. Oakland is the only team that expected Oakland to win that game. And now it's the Cinderella story of the year so far. Like, truly, that's probably the one. Well, you know what? The horny trend is supposed to extend.
The what trend?
You haven't heard this? Where there's like a sexual innuendo team that has beat, and they've been a double digit and they've upset someone every year. Oral Roberts, Fairleigh Dickinson, and then St. Peter's. Except, right? So St. Peter's and Morehead State have already lost. But you know who's still in? Longwood, who could beat Houston today.
Stop.
You see what I'm saying, bro? Like, I'm terrified. As somebody who has Houston in their Elite Eight, I am in my Elite Eight, I'm terrified.
I have them in my Elite Eight too, and now I can't look away from that portion of the bracket. That is bizarre. Wow, I can't believe that's a thing. I remember the jokes when Oral Roberts got in.
And it's been the last 4 years, though. So, like, it's not even just, like, an accidental thing. Like, it's a trend, a true trend that's happened years in a row. But my biggest stock is UConn and Purdue. I have them both going to the championship. I think they both have easier routes with air quotes around them, just with the way that they've been playing coming into the tournament.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I've got UConn and Purdue in my championship, as well as Arizona and Marquette rounding out my Final Four. Like I said earlier, my Elite Eight looks good for now, as long as you don't remember the fact that I picked South Carolina to make it all the way there, and they absolutely crapped the bed against Oregon. They looked awful against Oregon, and Oregon looked great. Oregon looked like a team that could, make that kind of run. And in that portion of the bracket, there's actually a lot of reasons. I know last week when we talked, I said that Tennessee was one of my favorites, and I said that Texas Tech was probably my dark horse. Texas Tech also lost, by the way, because NC State is one of the hottest teams in college basketball right now. But that route for Oregon actually could put them in position to make that Elite Eight run, because there's plenty of reasons to not like Tennessee. And Texas only beat Colorado State 56-44. So Texas is not getting past Tennessee, who can light up a score. Oregon can light up a scoreboard the way they did against South Carolina, which was known for having a fairly solid defense. All bets are off. Oregon, as an 11 seed, could find themselves playing a Purdue or a Gonzaga or a Kansas in that Elite Eight matchup. And I anticipate it'll be Purdue. Elsewhere, in the bracket, we both mentioned it. I think we both had Drake beating Washington State, right? Yeah, that was one of those upsets that a lot of people were counting on. And that's where you don't want to lose in your bracket, is when you had an upset and you felt really good about it, and all the other upsets happen and the one that you picked doesn't. Especially leading into Iowa State. Iowa State should be a very strong team, but you anticipated Iowa State having an easier path because they would get Drake.
But I think it's easy either way, to be honest, because if you look at that game, that might have been the best game in this March Madness tournament already. That Drake-Washington State game was so good.
Yeah.
It was basic. It literally was like down to the wire, and they were going back and forth all game. These are two very even teams. So I think Iowa State's fine either way, because you're getting an even matchup. Like, whether you got Drake, you're going to see a very similar team to what they're going to see in Washington State, and I think they're better than both.
Or you might get a Washington State that feels pretty confident after winning a game that a lot of people thought they were going to lose.
Yeah, but it's Drake. I don't like no kind of Drake. just throwing that out there. So, yeah, and I mean, but there's a couple of 10-7s. Like, I think I picked almost every 10-7. I did in this bracket. I picked every 10-7.
Well, that was dangerous.
I don't know.
The odds were not in your favor.
I don't know if Colorado was going to beat Florida. But I really trusted Drake and Nevada over Dayton, and I just took a swing with Colorado State, Texas, because they were also, to me, extremely even. Yeah. And it was kind of just like whoever comes out to play.
I did have Colorado over Florida, but the other 10-7 I think is actually the best game of the weekend that we've seen so far, or best game of day one. That was Dayton and Nevada, and that one was frustrating as well. Even though I had Dayton winning the game,
I say it's hard too, because then Kansas and Samford was an amazing game as well.
Yeah.
Like, Samford only dropping that one by 4 and being down by 1 with a little over a minute to go. Like, it was a phenomenal game.
Well, and that sets up a very fun game as well, because Gonzaga rolled past McNeese as expected. But with Kansas, that's a team that not a lot of people have a lot of faith in because they've been so injury prone and they've lost some big games. And now they draw one of the tighter seeding matchups this early in the tournament from what we can see so far. So, I mean, that's going to be a very fun game.
I'm really excited for that one. I do have Kansas pulling that one out. I think that they're really well-rounded. Even after what I saw yesterday against Samford, the thing about playing those higher seeds that have absolutely nothing to lose is you have to be on your P's and Q's all game. And you got to make free throws. You got to not turn the ball over. You got to, play great defense. And those were things that Kansas progressed in throughout the game, which I think is another key part of March Madness is you have to start playing pretty good / well, but if you can improvise and continue to improve those skills throughout every game and adjust based upon who your opponent is, you're in a better position to make it far. And that's what we saw Kansas do. They really applied pressure on the three-point line in the middle part of the game. So in between 10 minutes left in the first half and 10 minutes left in the second half, they played phenomenal perimeter defense, and that's what had them at a 22-point lead. They sagged off that a little bit, and here came Samford. So that one to me was a game that is set up to see amazingness with Gonzaga and Kansas, but I think Kansas has just enough.
So, quick answer, and then we'll go to break. I'm trying to toss you alley-oop here. Favorite upset of round one that we got to see on day one?
Alley-oop? Jeez.
Don't let it fly over the glass now.
I know. We got to be honest here. It's one that we're going to talk about in the next section. So, Oakland over Kentucky, man. It was electric. Everybody was into it, and you couldn't not like it.
And that's what we're going to talk about next here on Mitten Madness, 95.3 WBCK. Back here on Mitten Madness, 95.3 WBCK, Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes. The Oakland Golden Grizzlies from Wayne County had the upset of round one. I don't care what happens as we're recording. I don't think you're going to get anything unless this whole Longwood thing happens. I don't think you're going to get anything bigger than Oakland beating Kentucky, but what do I know? 80-76. And it was all thanks to 10 made 3-point shots by one Jack Golke. And this is insane, right? This first NCAA tournament win program history. Their coach has been there for 50 years. But to walk in on a Kentucky team, and I know Kentucky has had some rough history over the past several years in this tournament, but to walk in on Kentucky as 13.5-point underdogs and really control the game. And I mean, it's not like they won by 10 or anything, but you kind of look at this game flow on ESPN and how they just consistently had a plus 50% chance of winning for almost the entirety of the second half. So they're able to just control a team. And one of my favorite tweets I saw all throughout Thursday afternoon was, it's always amazing to see a future accountant really lay into a future NBA lottery pick. Because that's practically what you're looking at. Like, Jack Golke is not going to play basketball after this season unless he's really impressed, and I guess something goes his way. But, there's guys on this Kentucky team that are going to be in the NBA, that are going to be lottery picks. And they're in this situation yet again. We'll get into Calipari here in a little bit. But just a reaction to the Oakland Golden Grizzlies having the upset of the tournament so far as we're talking.
I absolutely love it. When it happened, I was like, okay, there goes my bracket and just about everybody else's in the world. But that's the kind of stuff that makes March Madness what it is. It's the kind of thing where people are trying to call into work so they don't have to be here. The ones where the productivity goes down because they got 3 screens on the game and half a screen on their work. Like, this is what we watch this tournament for. This is why this is the biggest moneymaker for the NCAA, is because people want this. Some dude coming out dropping 10 threes that people haven't heard of. And then they go back and look and they're like, oh, this dude a shooter. This is what he do. Like,
he made more threes in this game than he has attempted not 3-point field goals all year long.
We talk about dude from Nebraska called Japanese Steph. Like, white boy Steph is right here in front of our faces. Let's not ignore him.
Accountant Steph.
I like that. Steph the accountant. He's like, look, I'll drop 30 on you and then I hope you make 30. How you feeling? And I'm here for it. 32 points, 10 for 20, 2 for 3 at the free throw line. Like, that is such an impressive stat line, man. Like, let's see what else I can get out of this box score real quick.
While you're looking, his field goal percentage on the season, 38%, but he was 37.8% from three, 78% from the free throw line. Like, it's just bizarre.
And he's not a starter. Bro comes off the bench. You got a 32 piece from homie off the bench? Hopefully, he is the sixth man though, because he did play 36 minutes. But man, this dude ain't even good enough to crack his own top 5, and y'all let him drop a 32 ball on you. It's just crazy. He only grabbed 2 rebounds on the defensive end. He only had 1 turnover. Everything else is all zeros. That's actually like this college lacrosse player out at Syracuse. He is in like his 3rd year in college, has some like 49 goals or whatever, just picked up his first assist like 2 weeks ago. Like, the kid's just a pure shooter. That's it. This is crazy.
So I'm looking at the breakdown of the box score, because I didn't watch this game. I think a lot of people probably didn't watch the game. Had the assumption, Kentucky's got to get over this hump eventually. Why not against a team that's never won an NCAA tournament game? Kentucky did have a better field goal percentage by like 1.5 points, but the 3 ball was landing almost at half percentage, 48.4% for Oakland, 32% for Kentucky. But the real story is when Kentucky's turning the ball over 11 times, and Oakland is only turning it over 7 times when everything is going against them athletically.
And Oakland out-rebounded them by 1.
And out-rebounded them 40-39. Like, that's not some drastic thing, but still, just to have that tallied on there, again.
1 extra possession matters in a game where you win by 4.
Right. And we're talking about accountants, pencil pushers, against future NBA level players. So this all comes down to want to for Kentucky. And it's a recurring issue. So I ask.
Well, a lot of people have been saying it's not a want to thing. It's more of is Calipari done? Is Coach Cal reached his point where we saw with Roy Williams at UNC? We saw with Coach K at Duke. Saw with John Wooden back in the day at UCLA. You kind of just reach your time. Maybe even Nick Saban. Was Nick Saban still a really good coach and was still getting his team to the playoff? Yeah. But he also saw that, the game is changing right in front of my eyes, and I do not know if I can hang anymore. And he, got out before it got too bad. He's trying to prove, Cal's still trying to prove that he has it, and he's just getting deeper in the hole.
Well, I think that has less to do with the nature because he's still getting good players. He's still having great seasons. They're admittedly not as good as they used to be, but they're not really even in the fight for top dogs anymore. Top 50 players are all choosing Kentucky, Duke, Gonzaga. Yeah. Arizona's been coming Alabama's
up
taking a few
recently.
from them.
Yeah.
That says a lot about just the nature of what's going on in the SEC. But still, when you're a 3 seed, you expect to at least get to the round of 32, and they're having trouble getting to that point. And I just don't think the Nick Saban comparison works, simply because Saban was still able to. A lot of people looked at Saban's last year and said that was the best coaching job he did because that was the least amount of talent that he had, and they still went off and almost won a playoff game.
But he understood the backside of it, which is where he was getting out. He's like, look, I can't recruit anymore with the new way that things are. So I'm just going to bow out while I'm still on top. The Cal's like, look, I can't recruit. I can't do this, but I'm going to keep trying.
But that's what I'm saying is the difference, because I'm an alum, but there's a reason Nick Saban's one of the best coaches of all time in his sport. But this is getting to the point where you're starting to question if Calipari was just a good recruiter at one point and not necessarily a good coach. And that's hyperbolic, but the fact is he's having a hard time getting his teams prepared, both mentally and physically, to play in an NCAA tournament and putting them in positions to be successful because they're losing to these double-digit seeded teams in the NCAA tournament with a regularity that is concerning for a blue blood program. And that's where I think we're at the same conclusion. It might be time for Cal to figure something else out. I think we're just arriving in different ways. But I mean, at some point, if you're Kentucky's AD, you're like, Doug, we don't have, like, Stoops is doing a great job with the football team, but this is a basketball school and Cal ain't getting it done no more, even though the field has technically gotten a little bit easier because Tommy Izzo is on the back end of his career. Coach K is gone. You know, so much has changed in the landscape of college football. And there are teams in the SEC that are starting to overlap Kentucky and become more problematic for the rest of the country, namely Tennessee and Alabama, and even South Carolina to a degree with the season that they just had. Auburn is a great SEC team too, much as that hurts to say. There's a lot of issues there with Kentucky. But I mentioned Coach Izzo. We do need to get into Michigan State. Pulled off the win in the battle of the MSU schools. This one looked elementary from tip-off, that Michigan State was just a better team athletically and coaching wise and everything else under the sun. Mississippi State really just had, one player that they could lean on. And they weren't able to get much of anything going against Michigan State. What was your take on the Spartans in round one of the NCAA tournament?
Exactly what I thought was going to happen. So I told you, I told some of my other friends, I told people all around, this is what Michigan State does. They are we just need to get their team. They got there, got a 9 seed. 9-8 is one of the most accepted upsets that isn't really an upset. Of course I picked 9 over 8. Michigan State was going to win this game 10 times out of 10. The real problem is the next one. Yeah. Where you're facing one of the hottest teams in the country that has talent all around and can take care of the ball in North Carolina.
And one of the teams that didn't struggle with their ridiculously low, obviously the number 1 seed, they played 16, but a lot of these teams have struggled with these lower seeded teams. Baylor, as we're talking right now, is 59-43. Arizona struggled early against Long Beach State. There's been some tomfoolery. We just talked about the Kentucky loss. So, North Carolina is one of the hottest teams in the country. So I think, Big Sean was actually one of the only celebrity picks on ESPN that actually picked Michigan State to go all the way.
Oh, well.
I've got a bad feeling his bracket's about to get busted.
Me too, but the question is, he might be onto something, because if they're going to shoot these shooting splits that they had yesterday, 50% from the field, 43.5 from 3, 83.3 at the line, it's going to be hard to say they're not going to be a team that can compete, because we know they have it on the defensive end.
To be fair, they weren't getting contested a lot on those shots. They drew one of the easiest teams from the SEC in this tournament by a large margin. I'm just saying, Mississippi State did not play defense in this game.
I didn't say they did. I just said they shot well.
Because here's another thing. Sparty turned the ball over 16 times in this game, playing against a team that could not keep up with them. So their mental errors were the only thing that kept this to a 69-51 game. It should have been 85-51.
I agree. It was still a sloppy game, but the shooting was done very well.
Yeah.
That's the important part, is they put the ball in the bucket when they needed to.
Study shows that if you score more points than the other team, you win. So we'll take a break. We're going to switch gears and talk about the Red Wings for a little while, but we will come back and pick many of these games in round 2 of the NCAA tournament as they're set to take place later today. As you're listening, obviously it is Friday, so a lot of the things that are happening Friday afternoon as we're recording, can't really talk about them, but we'll pick a lot of those games here in just a little bit. First, Red Wings talk next here on Mitten Madness 95.3.
Detroit sports fans, Wolverines and Spartans alike. This is your sports show, Mitten Madness, with Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes on 95.3 WBCK.
Back here on Mitten Madness 95.3 WBCK, Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes. We're going to shift gears a little bit from basketball For just a quick moment, the Detroit Red Wings back on a 2-game winning streak with wins over the Islanders and the Blue Jackets. Brings their record up to 36, 28, and 6, 5th in the Atlantic Division. But all important is that number 2 seed in the wild card. They're back in it after taking that away from the Islanders. And now they have one more Western Conference game tonight against Nashville, and then 4 subsequent, easy for me to say, road games against some teams that are in their company, such as Washington and Tampa, but also Florida and Carolina. And then they'll close out the rest of the schedule all against the East, as well as they try to lock in one of those wild card spots. Now, the team that they're going to play a little bit later, we are going to pick this game, so we're not going to get too crazy into it. The Preds just came off of a win over the Florida Panthers. So effectively, the Panthers are now number 2 in the East. The Panthers, which are a wild card team in the West, made the number 1 team in the East the number 2 team in the East. That's a little alarming. Having to play Nashville. Nashville's a very good team. West is pretty strong, all things considered. But to the Red Wings' credit, Lucas Raymond really stepped up in the absence of Dylan Larkin, but now Larkin is back, and now they're on a 2-game winning streak and are back in position to lock in a playoff spot, though they did have that loss to the Penguins. That might come into play a little bit later, but plenty of Eastern Conference games on the slate to get back into it. DJ, I turn it over to you. What's your thoughts on what's going on at this point in the season with the Red Wings?
They better pray and hope that Dylan Larkin don't get hurt again. Wrap him in some bubble wrap or give him one of them protective balls or something. I don't know what they got to do, but this man has to stay healthy. When he's good, he's playing, he's healthy, the Wings are almost unstoppable. The second this guy's not on the ice, they're a whole different team and crumble. Mm-hmm. Like, we've seen it in the trends throughout the season and the last couple weeks. So that's just part 1. And part 2 is just energy. Like, you're right there. All the games you have left are against East opponents, so it's only going to help you in the standings. You have to come out ready to play. You're right there in terms of the wild card and getting in, and you've done so well all year. Don't just throw it away now at the end of the season. Like, it's just an attitude thing to me. Like, turn it on because you're right there. If you're going 100% and you end up losing a couple games, you don't make it, that's fine. But to not have that go get it energy and mentality at this moment of the season seems troublesome, in my opinion.
The Red Wings are 3-7 in their last 10, which is by far the worst of any of the teams that are in the playoff seeding at the moment. It's actually the second worst 10-game stretch of any team in the East. Only the Montreal Canadiens, which is the team that the Red Wings will close out the season against in back-to-back games, have a worse record in the past 10 games, but they've at least lost 4 of those games in overtime. That's been one of those things. Florida hasn't lost very many games at all, but they only have 4 overtime losses, but they've won 45 games, so it doesn't really matter. But for a team like Detroit in the position they're in, they and the Lightning are both kind of in the same boat where they both have just 6 overtime losses and are hovering around 25, 28 losses. And you look down at a team like the Islanders, which, granted, does not have a lot of wins, 29, 25, but 15 overtime losses. If the Islanders are able to go back on another run, that makes them a very dangerous team. Luckily for the Red Wings, they're 4-5-1 in their last 10. You go down to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Look, if any team you should be scared of to make a late season run, and I know that they're painfully average this year, but if there's one team that you're like, they've got a history, they know what they're doing. I know they're 3-6-1 in their last 10, but the history of that and the fact they still have Sidney Crosby on their team, that can make them a danger for that second seed. Not to mention the Washington Capitals, who also have more overtime losses than the Red Wings. and are really, really close behind there for that second seed. I feel pretty confident in the idea that Tampa Bay will lock up one of these wild card spots, if not, actually bump Toronto down to the wild card. But for the Red Wings, again, because you're playing all these teams in this stretch. You're playing the Capitals. You're playing the Islanders. I think they have another game against the Penguins as well. You're playing all these teams to round out the season. And like you said, you've got Larkin back now. As long as you don't lose him, you should be in a position to solidify yourself. But you know that because of that 6-game losing streak, the limit is right there, because you can't really afford to lose anymore, period. You're not going to get above the wild card, so everything is just that much tighter. There's coming to the point in the season where there's not much room for error.
That win streak has them back at the 2 seed in the wild card, though. So as of right now, they are in the playoffs.
But barely holding on is my point.
I don't care. I don't care. Hold on. Just hold on. That's it. I don't care if you scrape in by 1 point. You got in and they didn't.
Yeah.
So at this point, you got a 3-point lead on the Capitals, who are the next closest team. As long as you are maintaining with them, if they lose, you got to win. If they win, you got to win. If they lose in overtime, you bet not lose in regulation. As long as you are collecting points the same nights or nights where they're not collecting points, then the Wings are in a good position.
Yeah, that's about all I've got on the Red Wings. Was trying to look up an article for playoff projections and those types of things, but seems to be a little bit more focused on, it's not giving a whole lot of actual information. So tough stretch. Again, we talked about it last week with this road. Obviously, they're playing a Western team tonight, but Nashville is at least in the East. But still, this is a lot of territory to cover over the next week and change, where they have to go down to Nashville, back up to D.C., down to Carolina, down to Florida, over to Tampa, and then come back to Detroit to play the Rangers, which is a very strong team in the East, play Buffalo again, and then have to stave off Washington there on April 9th, which could be a pivotal matchup for the wild card. And if Pittsburgh is coming back a couple days later after that, this is a really tough stretch. Just give me a confidence level in managing that road run and then coming back to play one of the best teams in not just the conference, but really in the entire NHL.
It's never fun going back and forth between the good teams and the bad teams, or the good teams and the good teams. Especially at this point in the year where everything matters. You need every win you can get. I'm going to try and pull up the Wings schedule here. They're going to have some tough matchups as this season ends. Preds up this weekend. They still got to play Florida again. They have to play Tampa Bay again. They have 2 against Washington, which I think is an amazing opportunity for them to go ahead and kind of widen that gap against them in the Capitals. You win both of those games, and you're in a much better position. They have 2 against the Habs later this year, 15th and 16th of April to close out the regular season. Pittsburgh is mixed in there as well. The Rangers, not the Islanders, on the 5th. Is there as well. So there's some good competition, but most of them are on the east side of things. So these are big, big games for the Wings.
We'll shut that down there, and we'll come back, and we'll have our picks. Best of luck to the Red Wings on that road stretch to close out the month. We'll pick that Nashville game coming up tonight. Next here on Mitten Madness, 95.3 WBCK.
95.3 WBCK.
All right, we're back here on Mitten Madness, 95.3 WBCK. Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes going to go through our picks, and hopefully I'll do a hell of a lot better than I did last week, DJ.
Yeah, you had it rough last week. A solid 1-5.
Solid.
For you. And I came in 3-3, which has us all knotted at 14-16 in this run of picks.
I mean, We're still both below 500, so it's still rough. And this is a tough slate of games that we've got lined up for today. So anything can happen. But I'm certainly not playing with a lot of confidence here. Let's get things started. One of the biggest games of round 2 that is solidified after day 1 is the number 4 seed Kansas Jayhawks taking on the number 5 seed Gonzaga Bulldogs. Gonzaga has a 59.1% chance to win. They are coming off of a 86-65 win over McNeese State, while Kansas is coming off a 93-89 win over Samford. DJ, who wins this round of 32 matchup later today on CBS?
I know I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm feeling good about it, and I'm rocking with a former Michigan man to do it. Hunter Dickinson and Kansas will move on.
Yep, we are going to be split on this. This was actually one of the few round of 32 games that I had completely correct. I'm underselling myself a little bit there, but Gonzaga is a team that I have advancing to the Sweet 16. So I am going to stick with the Zags.
And moving on, next game, one of our teams is in it, Michigan. Stand up. We'll talk about the one we kind of expected to be here first. Michigan State, they're going to be taking on North Carolina. The Tar Heels are expected to win this game, 63.6% on the matchup predictor. They're coming off a huge victory, 90-62 over Wagner in the first round. And, of course, Michigan State doing their thing in the MSU battle over Mississippi State. Who you got winning this game down in Charlotte?
Yeah, I mentioned when we were talking about the Michigan State-Mississippi State game that those turnovers were a bit concerning. And the fact that the Bulldogs really didn't play a lot of defense. You brought up their shooting percentages being really, really good. Admirable, really. But those shots weren't being contested. North Carolina is a clean team and a team that I don't think is in a position to lose to a team like Michigan State, especially after handling business despite the ACC tournament not going the way they wanted it to. So, I have the Tar Heels in my bracket advancing in this game, so I'm going to take them here as well.
I'm also taking the Tar Heels here. I think that they're one of the best teams in the tournament right now with how, versatile they are across the board. They're a well-rounded team, great guard play. Armando Bacot is arguably one of the best forwards in the country. They play up and down the floor, and they play disciplined. So I think they're going to take care of the ball and handle Michigan State. Not necessarily with ease, but not necessarily a huge problem either.
Next one, we've got Iowa State. They are the number 2 seed, one of the hottest teams in all of college basketball. They are going to host, technically host the number 7 Washington State Cougars. Cougars coming off of a 66-61 win over Drake, which is a team that a lot of people had pegged to win in that 10-7 matchup. While Iowa State coming off a 82-65 victory over San Diego State. South Dakota State. I'll get it right here in a minute. The Cyclones are a 6.5-point favorite with an 85.7% chance to win. But as we talked about, the Cougs could be coming in with momentum after picking up a win that not a lot of people expected them to have. Who do you got?
I'm looking at last 5, and the trends are good. Anytime a team beats Kansas State, Baylor, and then Houston in a row, it's hard for me to say they're not a good team. Iowa State's rolling right now, and I expect them to continue rolling.
Hey, if you could win the Big 12 tournament, you're pretty good because that conference is pretty good, especially the 3 teams you listed off there. I as well will take the Cyclones in this matchup.
Well, we got one more in this March Madness, and it's our boys from Rochester Hills, Michigan, Oakland University. Stand up. Your Golden Grizzlies are battling it again, this time with NC State, and they're going to have a problem on their hands with DJ Burns Jr. That man is huge, and he plays good basketball. They got NC State, 79.7% chance to win. And NC State, 5-0 in their last 5 over Syracuse, Duke, Virginia, UNC, and Texas Tech. On the other side, Oakland, 5-0 in their last 5. Detroit Mercy, Purdue Fort Wayne, Cleveland State, Milwaukee, and then obviously Kentucky. Do you see anything changing, or will the Golden Grizzlies continue rolling?
So, first of all, it's funny. It's the state of Michigan versus the state of North Carolina.
Yes.
Over the next couple of days. Hey, hats off to Oakland, man. That was really impressive what you did to Kentucky. But NC State's one of the the hottest teams in the tournament. They're one of the teams that I instantly regretted not picking to advance. And honestly, if I would have thought about it for a split second, I'd have had them in my Sweet 16 instead of Kentucky. My bracket would be looking a lot better despite that loss that Kentucky had. But, you know, that's how it goes sometimes. NC State's a very good basketball team. They're very hot. They're not the elite of the elite, which is what Kentucky is supposed to be as far as talent goes. So it could still be another tight matchup, but I am going to stick with the Wolfpack.
There's no way I'm not going with NC State here. DJ Burns Jr. is absolutely fantastic. And I would love to pick the Golden Grizzlies and watch their story continue. But maybe there's something down the line that I don't know that's going to happen. Maybe he's going to come off the bench for another 30-point game, which is just crazy to me. But really, I see this one getting out of hand in the state of North Carolina, taking care of business against both Michigan schools. So I'll take NC State as well.
We do have to give a little shout out to Meatball, though, because Meatball does have a joke bracket where he had Oakland going to the Sweet 16. So we know who he'd pick in this scenario.
We do, and it would be Oakland. Maybe I'll mark him down on the side for that.
Right. We'll just give an honorary pick for Oakland there. Sticking in the state one last time. We've got that hockey game we talked about earlier. Detroit taking on Nashville. Nashville has 41 wins, and they're a wild card team in the West. They beat the Florida Panthers in their last outing 3-0. Knocking the number 1 team down to the number 2 team in the East. Nashville's pretty good. They've beaten Winnipeg, Seattle, San Jose, and Florida in their last 4, whereas Detroit is still trying to climb back after a 6-game losing streak, and they have won 3 of their last 4, including a loss to Pittsburgh and 2 wins over Columbia and New York. So Detroit really needs another win here. Not vital, being an interconference matchup, but nonetheless would do them some good to pick up a W here on the road. Who do you got? Detroit, Nashville.
Trends matter a lot to me. Trends matter a ton. One of the big trends on the season for the Red Wings is Dylan Larkin on the ice. Good. Dylan Larkin not on the ice. Bad.
Patrick Kane on the ice. Good. Patrick Kane not on the ice. Bad.
Red Wings, Lyon in net. Phenomenal. Reamer in net. Okay. Husso in net. And Dylan Larkin's technically day-to-day, but I would assume he's going to suit up for this. Yeah. Rasmussen also day-to-day. I will assume that he will suit up. Wallman will be out. Wings 4-1 or 3-2, sorry, in their last 5. A 4-1 loss to Arizona, but then turns around 4-1 win against Buffalo. Drops 6-3 to Pittsburgh, which is always concerning. 4-3 OT win over the Blue Jackets and a 6-3 routing of the Islanders. Meanwhile, on the other side, we got 4-1 in the last 5 over Florida 3-0, San Jose, 8-2. Seattle 4-1, Winnipeg 4-2, and then a overtime loss to Minnesota. The Preds are just playing better ball right now, but I'm still going to stick with the Wings.
Ugh. Okay. So I was going to add to your trends there. You know what Nashville is in their last 10? 8-0-2. They're averaging 4 goals, 7 assists, 3 penalties, 7.8 penalty minutes while giving up just 1.8 goals per game. The Wings, those 2.6 goals per game aren't going to be enough. Giving up 4 goals per game in their last 10, not going to be enough. As I mentioned, Nashville wildcard team on the other side of the league. The Red Wings won this one, 5-4. It seems like in a lot of ways it should be a little bit more evenly matched, even with Larkin and Kane on the ice. But I still think the Red Wings are going to have one more bruise on them before they go down this stretch in the East to close out the regular season.
All right, last game on the hardwood. It's the professional one this time. The Kings will be taking on the Magic. This is a battle of 2 very young teams that have been absolutely balling this year. Guys like De'Aaron Fox averaging almost 30 points a game. Sabonis averaging a double-double and almost a triple-double. Paolo Banchero absolutely killing it, 22.6 points a game and another 5.4 assists. He's getting help from Wendell Carter Jr. Kevin Huerter will be out of this game. Gary Harris is a game-time decision. The Kings are 3-2 in their last 5, and the Magic are undefeated in their last 5. 5. This game is at the Kia Center in Orlando, Florida at 7 p.m. on Saturday. But Kings are 20-16 on the road. The Magic are 25-9 at home. The Magic currently are a couple games better on the record on the year than the Magic. Who you got?
The last time these two met up, the Kings won a double overtime thriller on January 3rd. I'm going to stick with the Magic. They're the hotter team. Not by much. Both these teams are very good, clearly. But 8-2, averaging 107.5 points per game and plenty of turnovers. There are a few things leaning towards Sacramento a little bit more, but I've gone against the Magic too many times. I remember when I emphatically picked the Pacers, and that was a bad decision. So I'm going to be a little bit more conservative. Been pretty aggressive this week. I'm going to stick with the Magic.
Well, I'm also going to go with the Magic. I think they're going to split the series here with the Kings. It's really more so this last 5. That's huge to me. 2 wins over Toronto, a win over Charlotte, New Orleans, and Brooklyn. But the Kings do have a win over the Lakers and a win over Toronto and Memphis in that time, but a loss to the New York Knicks and a loss to the Washington Wizards, which was just on the 21st. So that's very troublesome to me. I'm going to rock with the Magic, which means, once again, we only have 2 split games. Kansas is me. Gonzaga is you. NC State, UNC, Iowa State, and Magic will both take. I got the Wings, and you got the Preds. Send us on out of here for the weekend.
Yeah, that's going to do it for Mitten Madness today. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Next week, I won't be here. I don't know what DJ's going to do, if he's going to be alone or if he's going to recruit meatball or something. But we'll enjoy March Madness along the way, either way, as it's only going to pick up from here. And we'll continue to cover that as it's the namesake of the show. So we'll have fun with it. We'll follow Bob Cowardly Gardner next week at 10 a.m. for more Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK.
Join Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. for Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK. Miss the show or want to play it back? Stream Mitten Madness live or on demand on the 95.3 WBCK app.